These names in these two lines of poetry are proofs of the humility of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she remembered, she said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was once brought a little child. The companions used to bring their newborn babies to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam so he could pray for them. He would also bite a date and then he would chew it, and then he would take the chewed piece of date and he would put it in the mouth of the baby. It's called tahniq, sweetening the mouth of the baby. It's a sunnah that Muslims continue to do to this day. So they would bring their babies to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for him to do this. They were eager because they wanted to seek the blessing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But sometimes things didn't turn out as they expected them to, and that's what happened here. Aisha said that a baby came and he was brought to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this purpose, and he began urinating on the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now I want you to imagine that in those times there were no diapers, and babies, they would be wrapped in a cloth, and this is what would happen. It was normal. They would start urinating, and this happened as this baby was brought to the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Most likely, when you look at the other hadith that have come around it, most likely this was the nephew of Sayyidah Aisha. It was the son of her sister Asma, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And it's come in a hadith that when her sister saw this happening, she was shaken. How can this happen? And so she began to take the baby away from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was embarrassed. She brought her baby to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he started urinating on her. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told her it's okay. He hasn't eaten any food yet. And so he said it's sufficient to sprinkle water over it. So the baby urinated in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet blessed it. He prayed for the baby. He gave the baby back, and then he took some water. Says no problem, and he sprinkled some water over his clothes, and they were considered to be clean. This became a hadith that is recorded in books of hadith, and scholars, they analyze based on this hadith. They teach us how to purify ourselves from such situations. But there's another aspect that I want us to look at. It's the aspect of the mercy of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for babies, and for the kindness and sensitivity that he showed to his companions so that they wouldn't be embarrassed when they brought these babies to him. This happened many times with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Babies being brought to him for him to pray for them, and babies urinating in his lap. And the scholars, they gathered the names of all of the babies who urinated in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they gathered it in two lines of poetry. And they said, قَدْ بَالَ فِي حِجْرِ النَّبِي أَطْفَالُ حَسَنٌ حُسَيْنُ بْنُ الزُّبَيْرِ بَالُ كَذَا سُلَيْمَانُ بُنَيْ هِشَامِ وَإِبْنُ أُمِّ قَيْسٍ فِي الْخِتَامِ, which means that there were a number of children who urinated in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then it proceeds to name them. It says Hassan and Hussein, the grandchildren of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Zubayr, the nephew of Aisha, most likely he's the one who was just mentioned in this hadith. Sulaymanu bunay Hisham, Sulayman, the son of Hisham. Ibn Hajar, he mentions elsewhere that it's actually the son of Hashim, but in the line of poetry, it's mentioned as Hisham, and the son of a female companion whose name was Qais. There were probably many other children who urinated in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but these 5 hadiths have been transmitted about them, and they wrote lines of poetry so that they could be memorized. I want you to imagine for a moment, is there anyone else in history about whom people gathered the names of the babies who urinated in their laps? Would people do this for Abraham Lincoln? Would people do this for Napoleon? Would they do it for a king or queen of England? No, it's unimaginable, but it happened with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of my children asked me, they said that won't these kids be embarrassed that their names are mentioned in lines of poetry and people memorize them, and that they urinated in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And I said, no, they wouldn't be embarrassed, because they will remember that they were brought to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he had mercy on them, and he was humble. He let children urinate in his lap. He wasn't above it, and it was publicized, and it turned into hadith that were preserved, and their names were written down in poetry, and their names were memorized. These names in these two lines of poetry are proofs of the humility of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are reminders of the mercy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they illustrate the kindness and concern and sensitivity of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his companions. He didn't want to hurt their feelings, and he did that by honoring their babies even when they urinated in his lap sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
We need your support. We want to produce over 100 videos in this series to show the beautiful character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This will be a positive response to all the bad things that people are saying about him. If they understood who he was, they wouldn't believe any of those accusations. If you like this video, please support this cause. You can help with as little as $1 or even with the click of a mouse. Go to discovertheprophet.com or click the link in the description below to find out all the ways that you can help people discover who the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Also to subscribe to our channel. All of this helps spread this message.